Welcome to Desi Return Diaries, Embracing Home Again, the podcast that shares personal journeys and expert insights on returning to India. I'm your host, Avinash Pedi, here to guide and inspire you on your Desi return journey. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Desi Return. Today we have Shweta on our podcast. Shweta did her bachelor's in IIT, worked in India for few years before moving to US. She came back to India and started her own firm. There are a lot of interesting facts. I mean, she settled in at her hometown and not part of like a big major city, which brings a different perspective to our audience. With that, welcome Shweta to our podcast.
Thank you, Vinash.
Great. So let's start with a little bit of your background. Your academic background, career-wise, what made you to move to US, and what was the thought process and the trigger points for you to decide to move back to India? I think that would be very helpful.
Sure, absolutely. So I graduated from IIT Delhi in 2010, and post that, from campus itself, I got placed into Goldman Sachs. So I was working in Bangalore for Goldman Sachs for about 6 years. And then somewhere in the middle there, because my husband and I both are from North India, we started feeling a little bit not at home there. And we started thinking we're living away from family, career wise, also, maybe we're not at the best place. So, what do we do? And we thought maybe if we went to US, where it's supposed to be really good for our careers, then that would sort of help satisfy this slight unsatisfaction that is coming in within us. And also, I think another point was we were seeing a lot of our friends who were going to the US and settling there, and no one was coming back. So we felt like there must be something great out there that we need to explore. And so yeah, that triggered us. Sort of, I had a conversation with my managers, and they agreed to relocate me within the firm.
Okay, that's great. So, when did you move to US, and for how long you lived there, and what was the decision process of coming back to India? So
Right.
that would be also helpful.
Yeah, so we moved to US in March of 2016, and post that we were there till about end of 2018, so almost 3 years. We were settled in New York, so we were living just across the river in Jersey City, and we were traveling to work on the Manhattan side. It was definitely a very an amazing city to live in, and of course it's New York. But and we really had a great time while we were there. So it was definitely a very difficult decision to move back, because everything was in a way great there, and there was no logical reason if anyone was talking to us as to why we would ever come back. But somewhere inside we felt something missing, and we felt like we're not at home. um, there was uh, it's difficult to put it in words, and I think it was at that time as well, where I was just glad my husband and I shared the same feeling, and that's why we could decide. But to all our friends, we were never able to explain exactly what it was. But I think it was something around that. Even US is very capitalistic, and there is a lot of hard work that you have to keep doing, and you feel that there is a little bit of distance between you and your parents who are living in India. And we could imagine the same thing from our kids, like they would feel distant from us. And somewhere it felt a little lonely, I think, in the longer run. So we knew that at this age, it was not something that would bother us, because we would just get busy in our careers, busy in raising the family, and just enjoying what else is out there. But in a couple of years, we could imagine being at a state where it didn't feel that great. And we knew that at that stage, it becomes very difficult to come back. So that's why for us, it was more that we can do this sooner rather than later. Other than that, I'd had a baby in 2000, early 2018. So we were also struggling with the challenge of raising a kid as part of a nuclear family, which is true in India as well. I guess if you live in big cities, when parents are not nearby, then it's the same challenge, I guess, that you face. But we also felt that even if we wanted to really enjoy New York, having a small kid is not the right time for it. So that also sort of decided the timing for us that we can go sooner rather than later.
Got it. So it sounds like you listen to your heart. I mean, so there is no like a concrete specific reason that you can put, but your
Right,
heart felt like it might be time to go, maybe
right.
come back. So that's great. So you came back to India in 2018. So did you decide a place or like how, so maybe you can talk a little bit about your career transition, like what was your thought process when you are planning to or when you decided to move back, and and how did you go about it? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, in terms of career, that was also, I think, a big deciding factor. Thanks that you pointed it out in terms of moving back. So, um, I was sort of starting to get a little dissatisfied on my work as well. So it had been almost 9 years that I had been working in this organization, and and again, everything was really great day to day. But if I imagined myself 10 years, 20 years down the line being really successful in that place and becoming really senior, I didn't think I would feel satisfied with the life that I've lived, being sort of that self-centered, I guess, where I was making money for myself and living a not happy, I would say living a luxurious life. But then there wasn't a lot more character to it than that, in my head at least. And that's what was bothering me. So, and we my husband and I both didn't have a lot of didn't have a lot of aspirations to spend on a lot of things. We always lived in a simple house. We always had simple clothing. We didn't really pursue a lot of luxuries, which would give us satisfaction of earning the money, I would say. So we had put a decent amount of savings in our bank, and we thought, we could just take some time to retire and just see what we actually want to do independent of earning money, and then we could do that. So when we moved back in 2018, the natural place to go to was our hometown, because there is already a home and our expenses would be less, and we could just take the time off and not do any work. So that's what we did. And for 1 year, we were basically just not doing anything, figure out what we would want to do. We explored making games. We explored, just doing something for the local vegetable vendors. On a lot of ideas that we could think of might excite us, but nothing really stuck. And um, and after some time, we felt that maybe this isn't exactly what we want to do. It didn't. Um, like sitting idle at home was also not giving us a lot of satisfaction. We were missing being around people, going to work. And that's when we thought there was also obviously some level of societal pressure, I would say. There were relatives around. If we were living somewhere, maybe nuclear, maybe we wouldn't have felt as much pressure. But everyone who would come home would be like, "Why have you come back from US? Why are you sitting idle, not doing anything when you can earn so much money?" So it was all of that pressure also probably added up, and a lot of other softer things, wherein we then decided maybe we can take a job. And then we explored that for maybe 10, 15 days, where we thought and we talked to a few people who were in jobs here in India. And again, it felt like a very hectic lifestyle that people were following. And we felt like if we were gonna do that, um, then again we might end up in the same place a few years later where we were before we returned to India. And that's why we felt we try to get a little more balance in our life, where it will not be this extreme that we are just not working at all, and it will not be the other extreme where work has become everything. So we'll try to be here in a smaller city close to our family and still doing some commercial activity that helps sustain us and gives us that satisfaction.
Great. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, there's a lot of information there in the details that you provided. Maybe let's try to unpack a little bit more. Just that would be helpful for the audience, and if you're okay to share. So you mentioned about moving back to India, and the lifestyle that you maintain as a minimalistic, or trying to have that kind of a lifestyle. You were planning to retire early, but was the intent always that you want to take some time off and then get back and decide what you want to do, or are you thinking of like a permanent retirement and let the life goes on? That's one question I just wanted to touch base, and then we can go into.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I actually we were thinking of it as a permanent retirement, and we were hoping that we would find our passion that we would really want to do. So my personal inclination was towards going to maybe an NGO and doing some social work and spending my life on that. My husband's was a little more around having a bit of leisure, I guess, where you don't have to worry about anything and you kind of can. I guess how you put it before was probably right, where you can do what your heart wants to do. You don't have to you don't have any obligations that you have to worry about in some ways. So that was so obviously it was very different for the both of us, but and we spent the year actually visiting a lot of other folks. So we have a couple friends who live in MP and do organic farming. They're also batchmates from IT Delhi, and so we visited them. They are also kind of doing that where they retired early. We also visited another couple who were settled in Himachal Pradesh, and so they also had moved back from US. They were earlier settled in Gurgaon for a couple of years, and then they had moved to MP. So we visited a lot of people where we felt, uh, those might be kind of where our life would also lead us, because people who had come before us were doing these things. Um, but none of those sort of excited us, because obviously for everyone it's a very um, different thing that each person's heart wants, right? So any of the options that we had explored didn't seem right. And when we thought that we both of us have actually always loved technology and loved coding and loved what jobs we were doing, just maybe not in the setup that we were doing it, if we could feel a little more free doing it. And that's how we actually thought, if this is what we really love doing, that maybe we should just spend the time doing it. And starting a company in a small town also fulfilled that social aspiration inside me a little bit, because it is generating employment for people who are here who don't want to move to a big city, or just helping in that sustainability a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. So it was a permanent plan of retirement, but after exploring, what you really want, maybe you're trying to balance it out based on just an experience, at least for now, right? Until
Yeah,
whatever your heart feels. Um,
correct.
yeah, if it is okay, I mean, this is a common question that comes across, like a lot of aspirants from return to India, especially a lot of people might be considering retiring after moving here because they don't want to continue the corporate world, or whatever the reasons. From your perspective, if you're open, is there certain numbers, right, in terms of you have to think about like how much of corpus fund, like how much of savings that you need to have in your account based on your expenses? I think that would be helpful. Again, this is not like a fire kind of like a retire early kind of deep dive. So this is just a quick point that we can touch.
Yeah, no, I think I can just share some numbers what we had worked out for ourselves. We had thought that because we'll be living in a smaller city, maybe, 2 lakhs a month kind of expense works for us. So 24 lakhs a year is kind of what we need. And you can sort of try to back calculate from there how much money you need to have invested so that you can have that much returns coming in. We were always hoping we can generate some sort of passive income source in India as well. We can maybe have some we had some property of our parents, so we were thinking maybe we can construct something there, give it out on rent to generate some income. Or we're also in the middle thought we build an Airbnb here, so that can help fulfill the need of meeting people and also generating some income. So that is what our plan was. But yeah, I think when like truly there is no income coming in, you also start spending less for just some psychological reason, and that's why I didn't think that particular aspect was very hard. My my personal feeling is probably very different to conventionally how we think in this. Is that we should not worry about that aspect so much, because no matter how much money you have, you will always, like, as you keep earning more, your lifestyle keeps becoming more and more expensive. And at each point, you will feel that money is not sufficient to ever retire. So, so it's like if you're feeling the need to take the jump, you should, and then figure out the money aspect, on the side. And I'm making an assumption here, but I feel like most of the people who are even considering this are fortunate enough in terms of the intellect they've got or the hard work they've got, that they would be able to make it fine, right? Because they've reached the stage in their life where they're no longer struggling with basic needs, and that's why they're even thinking about fire. And if they've reached that stage, I think they'll be fine in life, and they would be able to earn something or the other. Um,
Yeah, there is never a end to your desire, right? I mean, the more is always better, but it's also determining what's more important, whether continuing that race, or this is a quality of life that I would like to maintain, and based on that you can do. Everybody's calculation is different, everybody's way of looking at the life is different. But thank you very much for sharing that. I think that's very helpful. Maybe just going back to some of the things that you have mentioned. Since you worked in Bangalore, you worked in like a big metro in New York, which is much different than, like, I think, when you moved back to the hometown. I don't know where you like moved back, so you can tell about that. So maybe my question is more about, is there something that you miss in terms of the interactions, the intellectuals, or like some of the things that are available, right? I think because a big metro is different from maybe a small or like in a medium town. So if you can talk a little bit about living in these big metros, like in India, US, and then like coming back to another town in India, I think that would be very helpful for someone who is considering about moving to like a tier 2 city or a tier 3 city. So that would be very valuable.
Sure. So, absolutely. I think living in Bangalore as a bachelor was definitely amazing, because there are a lot of like things to do, friends to meet. Like most of your friends from college would also be in one of these three, four big cities. So, there's a lot of fun you can have. And at that point, I think people don't have very many responsibilities as well. So it's sort of the stage of life as well where you enjoy all of those things very much. And New York was again, I think, very similar in that sense, that there was like there is this whole breadth of experience available in New York, where no matter what your interests, you will find enough people who are interested in the same thing, and there'll be some or the other community that you can find and engage yourself in within those interests. So, um, but at this stage of life, at least when I moved to Karnal, I live in Karnal now, which is in Haryana. Um, I feel the smaller cities in India have also gotten very nice infrastructure, at least in this area in and around Delhi. So my place is about 2.5 hours from Delhi. And so the thing I like about the city is it's not very far from Delhi, it's not very far from Chandigarh. So I can find enough of my friends in these two cities that we can connect regularly. The roads are amazing, so travel time is not a lot. And again, the airport connectivity, similarly, we have airports in both these places, so it doesn't take me very long to go to the airport as well. Then, in a regular day to day way, I don't have to deal with a lot of traffic. I don't have to, like, going anywhere is not a hassle. And then we can also hire a lot of help, I guess, here, which is true in bigger cities as well. So I don't think that's much of a difference, but there is definitely a level of slowdown in pace, which is there in a smaller city. So, for example, here, when we live here, we have a small kitchen garden. We try to spend some time growing our own vegetables, because, I mean, that is one challenge which we truly felt in India, that the food quality itself you can't really trust. So I talked to a few people who were like, related to farmers, and they said even farmers nowadays are growing their own vegetables separately, which is free from the injections and free from all the pesticides, and the what they're growing for commercial use is different,
Yeah.
and we are doing that commercial use vegetables. So we're trying to find organic pulses and grains, etc. as well, trying to make sure, because this was one thing which we actually truly felt as one big difference, one big sort of thing we miss about New York, that the food quality was really great. Another thing I mentioned to people is I was definitely missing some of the things. Our taste got acquired to, like a good pizza, the, the kind of American pizza, which is more difficult to find in India. But there are still places where you can find it. We got used to eating cheesecakes. We got used to eating avocado. So, but I was actually surprised. We did find a shop in Karnal which sells avocado.
Yeah.
So it's stuff is all out there. I think it's just about finding it. Yes, certain things are going to be more difficult being settled here, but each place has its pros and cons, and I think it's more about just seeing which cons are you okay to live with.
Definitely. So yeah, thanks again for sharing such a valuable information that's going to be very helpful. Maybe moving on to that, the another point that you mentioned, which is starting a business or into an IT company in your hometown. So would love to hear a little bit more about that. I mean, especially finding people who has this experience. uh,
Right.
that's one aspect. And also like maybe ease of starting your own business in India. Is it easy, hard? Because there might be people who are considering about becoming an entrepreneur when they move back. So it would definitely be a good perspective for somebody who has done this, who
Right.
was in a career, in a professional career before. So I think if you can expand a little bit on those two things, that would be very helpful.
Sure. So my honest opinion actually is that it's really difficult still, even though it has probably become easier than before, given what we hear from the government. But it was still quite difficult for me to start this business. The one thing that actually made this easier, of course, was my husband, who has done multiple startups before. So he had a great deal of experience in starting and failing or succeeding companies. But but I think for me, definitely coming from a job, the challenge was the kind of whole variety of skills that you now need in for running a business. In a job, you're a lot more focused on sort of your role and becoming an expert at that. When starting a small company, you have to do everything, like right from making sure electricity is coming in your office, and how do you now figure it out? You put a generator or something so that people can actually work efficiently, or providing them with tea or coffee and stuff like that, which you never even had to think about in a regular job, which you would even look down upon, I would say, in a normal way, that why am I having to do these things? But you kind of have to do everything. And as we keep growing, there are 10 different types of taxes that you have to take care of. So you have to make sure even very early on to have a CA who can handle a lot of these financial aspects. Um, and then you have to play the role of an HR also. You have to play the role of a salesperson also, and you have to play the role of the person doing the execution as well. So we were lucky that we were able to always find people who were joining us in various kind of positions, and who were smart enough that our company was able to do well. And Yeah, so I think in that sense, actually, we felt like starting a company in a small city. Obviously, it becomes a lot more challenging because you have much smaller pool of people to choose from when you're going, because not everyone wants to move here. But then once we're able to find such a person, and it aligns for them that this is where they really want to stay, we get a much better retention. And it's probably also about sort of the work culture that we're trying to maintain. We're ensuring that there is no toxicity in the work culture. There is, working hours are reasonable, and that, so a lot of things that we've actually borrowed from the American work culture, where we've always spent our, so even when I was in Bangalore, because I was working for an American company, all the work culture and work ethics I know about are inspired from a US based organization. So that is what we have also tried to imbibe in our organization.
Okay, great. So I know, I think you kind of mentioned maybe a perspective from coming from a professional career to like an entrepreneur where you have to wear a lot of hats, a lot of things that you have to take care. Maybe just to clarify, maybe for the audience, is it going to be much more challenging from a administrative side? Doing a startup in India versus doing a startup in US, right? I mean, I just wanted to,
Right,
so just maybe peel it a little bit more on that
right,
particular topic. Is it just maybe more bureaucratic, like more forms to fill in, or
right,
maybe the difficulty of starting a company in India is much more harder than what, maybe abroad? So I don't know if you
right.
have any perspective on that or anything that you can share there.
Right. Actually, I don't really have much perspective on that because I didn't really get an experience of how difficult it is to do in US. But from a India standpoint, I would say there is definitely some bureaucracy involved, but for the most part, I think there is help available. So there are people who are experts in a lot of these areas who are available to sort of guide you on how to do these things. It's easy to miss some of the things, but if you're okay to just sort of keep some more buffer, as in terms of financials, and sort of, so there are like very very small things, like maybe there's ESIC which you have to give for people who have lower income. There's some insurance that is insured by the government, and let's say you forget about it because no one told you that this is something you need to take care of as soon as you become a, I don't know, 5-10% company. So then you're like, fine, I missed it. And then later, whenever you start doing it, there's some fines that you have to pay and some little more paperwork that you have to do. But maybe if you're okay with that, those kind of like extra money that you have to spend because you didn't care about these aspects in the beginning, then that can make your life a little bit easier. So I would definitely say it's not easy, but if you take a little more money as your buffer and feel that, I'll focus on some of the more core aspects of my business to begin with, and then maybe get to these a little bit later, then that might help.
Okay, great. Maybe just switching the gears a little bit. So, are there anything that you miss from US or cons of living in India? Maybe if you can summarize. I think we kind of touched about a lot of positive things
Right.
and other aspects. So, if there's anything that from your perspective that you miss or not like is the right word, but I mean this is not
Yeah.
like in the ideal place, right? I think in India. So, anything that you can share from your perspective.
No, absolutely. There are a lot of things that we miss, honestly. First of all, at the top, it'll be clean air. Especially around this area, there's a lot of pollution, and in normal days, it's still okay. But there are like maybe at least 1 or 2 months in the year when it becomes like really unbearable, and you have to be indoors and always with the air purifier on. So that obviously is one big challenge. Then there is just, I think, aesthetically how beautiful US is. Most of our cities, I guess maybe because of population or I don't know, whatever reasons, are not that um, pretty in a usual way. We obviously have a lot of monuments and everything, which are great and really pretty. But in a general sense, like when we were in Jersey City, we could just walk over to the river, and there was a nice little walkway around it, and we could just take a walk there, and it would look like you are on a trip somewhere. You're on a holiday. So you don't get that kind of a feeling here in at least the kind of city where I live. Then like I'd mentioned before about the food, there are definitely certain things that I've acquired the taste for and I miss those. And I think a little bit on the sort of work culture wise also, just even for very small things that you have to do, like maybe you have to get something repaired in your home or you have to call a plumber. In US I felt like it was very easy because if someone said they're going to come in at that time, they're going to come in at that time, and you could just leave your key there and they would do the work and go. Here, if someone says they're going to come at 2 p.m., you have to make at least 10 calls after that, and after that this person comes. So all of those were definitely a big cultural shock for us, that we've always lived in this culture, but somehow even within 3 years we returned. even then it felt like a big cultural shock. So I'm sure for people who've spent more time in US, it would feel like a big deal. And other than that, is there anything else? Yeah, I think that would broadly summarize the kind of things we miss. But I think there's like for some of these things, I feel there is some level of beauty in this kind of chaos which is there in India. It's not a very organized sort of place, but you do find once you come back and give it some time, you do feel acquainted to it, and it doesn't bother you as much.
Okay, great. Yeah, again, thank you for sharing that. So, is there any topic or anything else that you wanted to communicate that we haven't covered?
Right. Um, no, I think I'm good.
Okay, great. Um, so, thanks a lot. I think we are going to our final segment, which is like in the rapid four.
Mhm.
So, what's the surprise thing that you noticed after returning to India?
A surprise.
Yeah.
Um, the kind of cafes and everything, and the kind of things that are available in India now. When I had gone to US, I remembered India as it was at the time when I had left. So when I came back, I realized India has moved forward from there, what my image of India was. Um, yeah, in a lot of ways, India is a lot more similar to US than I had imagined before I moved.
Okay, great. And your favorite travel destination in India?
Um, that I would say is in Himachal. So it's nearby. We can go quickly.
Yeah. And then favorite Indian dish or a restaurant?
uh, Indian dish, maybe rajma chawal.
And then the last one is favorite part of living in India.
uh, I would say a little bit around spirituality. There is a lot of wealth of information we have around spirituality here, which is just innate to our culture. We don't have to do much to sort of get those, which are difficult to find anywhere else. And so, yeah, and in terms of spirituality, actually, they also say that it matters where you are. And given that a lot of like people have spent their lives pursuing spirituality in India, just the land itself has those vibrations, and being here, you can feel a little more spiritual than other places. So that I would say is one thing that I feel is
Okay, great. So I think that's all for today. Once again, thank you very much for sharing your personal journey. A lot of nuggets there,
right.
especially in terms of living in a tier three city. The things that you miss, the aspects of starting your own, business. Lot of valuable information, and really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. No, it was very wonderful talking with you.
Great.
Thank you all for joining us on this insightful journey of Desi Return. If you enjoyed this episode and want to explore more stories and expert advice, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts and experiences. By the way, check out the links in the description below for our Facebook group and social media for updates and engaging discussions, as well as connecting with fellow Desi Returners. Thank you once again, and until next time, may your Desi Return journey be filled with joy, growth, and endless possibilities.